Good afternoon. My name is Michael Mulgrew. I'm the president of the United Federation of Teachers. I'd like to point out a disturbing pattern. When things go wrong in the schools, it's never this administration's fault. Class sizes skyrocket. We're told it's the principals who make the decisions about class size. Kindergartens have huge waiting lists. We're told people live in the wrong neighborhoods. NAEP scores are flat. They don't count, only the state tests do. And now, when the DOE, when the calendar is all wrong, it's the UFT's fault. This is obviously something that we need to set this record straight on, because the Chancellor has clearly decided to try to avoid all responsibility on what he has done this year and for next year's calendar. Parents should be outraged that Chancellor Klein has refused to exert his authority that he has over the school calendar and manage the school calendar properly for next year. The Chancellor today blamed this union for his decision not to make Wednesday, September 8th, a professional development day. The decision means that despite requests from some parents to delay the first day that children report to school from September 8th to September 13th, that will not happen, and that children will be reporting on the 8th. Teachers will report on the 7th. Whether children come in on the 8th or not, the teachers will still be there. As you might have expected, Chancellor Klein's letter to the parents ignores the fact that the Chancellor does not need to get the union's agreement to make September 8th a professional development day. It also ignores the fact that a number of schools earlier this year who have put in to a school-based option application to change the day have all been denied by the Chancellor and the Department of Education. If this was not a good idea then, why is it all of a sudden a good idea now by the Chancellor? This union has suggested calendar changes twice over the last 2 years. One was for 2 days specifically. We thought it was wrong that the school year would end on a Monday, a half day. And they told us the days fall where they fall. And this year, when the calendar came out, we pointed out the problem with September 8th, and we were also told on that time, the days fall where they fall, there will be no changes. We recommended to the Chancellor and to the Board of the Department of Education that schools should be able to be given the option of choosing if they want to start that day or switch it with another day. Many of the schools, as I have already said, put in those applications. They were all denied, and they have told us that schools should not be able to make their own decisions on this. The Chancellor letter claims that letting each school make its own decision would be chaotic. But for years, this system operated with different school schedules for different boroughs, and schools across this system have already been permitted for next year to make other days non-report days for students. I am sorry to hear that Chancellor Klein feels that his managers lack the competence to do this. The UFT has tried to ensure that the school calendar works for families and teachers, but the responsibility of the calendar is in the administration's hands. I'd now like to introduce some of the district reps who, even though they were told that these days probably would not be permitted, they did go forward with schools and with parents and teachers voted and submitted applications to switch the days and were denied. I'd first like to introduce Staten Island District Representative, Mr. Sean Rockowitz.
In Staten Island District 31, 9 of our schools, elementary and intermediate schools, submitted SBOs regarding the first day of school back September 8th to be a professional development day. Those schools were PS5, PS8, PS14, PS23, PS38, PS56, IS61, and PSIS 861. And as Michael just said, it's important to note that the SBO process here, that both administration and staff have to collaboratively agree on the modification. This particular one also, the parents have to be involved because of the change in the calendar. And in all of these schools, it is important to note that both through the school leadership team and through the PTA, the parents in these buildings also agreed to make this shift. So that's the collaboration that you hear talked about so much that we invest ourselves in, but it's disappointing to note, apparently, that there's so much gamesmanship being played by the Board of Ed and the Chancellor here. Thank you.
I want to be clear on this again. We flagged this day. We were told it could not be changed. It is still within their authority to change the day to a non-report day for students, a PD day for teachers. We've had numerous schools who've put in to try to change this. They've all been denied. And we would have had more schools do it, but the word was very clear to everyone that they were denying them. In a consultation on May 12th between leadership at the Department of Ed and leadership at the UFT, this was a specific item that was brought up, and they were emphatic that they would not approve the changing of this day. So with that in mind, I now like to bring up Queens District Representative, Ms. Mary Vaccaro.
So in District 26, my district, there were 10 schools, PS 26, PS 31, PS 46, PS 133, PS 159, PS 173, PS 186, PS 188, PS 203 and PS 205 that all put in for a change in date from that day to Brooklyn Queens Day, for there to be a change in the start date to September 13th. The same is true for District 26. Our teachers met in consultation with the administration of the school, along with meeting with the parents on the school leadership team and the PTA. They never actually got a reply back of no from the Department of Education. It was just that emails were going back and forth that they did not believe it was going to be approved, but nothing formally ever came from the Department of Education. So in District 26 on Friday, we were still receiving phone calls from some of the schools asking what would be the start date of the schools and whether SBOs officially denied or not. Not until today, when they received the letter from the chancellor saying that the UFT would not agree, which was not true, did they know that this was not even being approved. So for District 26, that's where we were. Thank you.
So, and people here, the leadership here were part of the meetings with the Department of Ed on this subject. It's very sad that the chancellor has decided to play games with this issue, because we've been open to them from the beginning. We told them they had an issue. We have also told them it is in their authority. They don't need any agreement with us to change that to a non-report day for students. But he sends out a letter today, and the letter to me was clearly an attempt to misrepresent the facts to the parents and to avoid any of his own responsibility for the management of the school system, which he does have authority over. So I'd like to take some questions now.
Mike, it seems that based on what the DOE is telling us right now, it seems that the only issue then becomes this Brooklyn Queens Day and their desire to turn that into an instructional day.
Our position is that each school should be able to make their own decision. And this is what some of these schools have done. They said, let's flip it with that day. Other schools have made other days during the school year non-report days, and they've already been approved for next year. So there are 185 days in next year's calendar. They don't need our permission to change that to a non-report day for students. And that's the part that's so frustrating right now to us. Instructional time is very valuable, and we have to be very careful, and you should leave it up to each school to make this decision on their own, because there's some schools who've told us they don't want to do it, and there are other schools who said they would like to do it. So this idea that it's on our shoulders is absurd. I mean, this is the chancellor's some piece of work at times on this issue. I mean, he wants to take no responsibility. He has 185 days in the calendar. He can make this a non-report day anytime he chooses. The Brooklyn Queens Day and the first day of school are the two biggest PD days that we have. Okay, the first one of September is what we call a nuts and bolts logistics day. It's basically setting up your school and moving forward. The one you have in June, it's about planning the educational plan for the following year. So it was clear from the beginning. What we said was give each school an option of doing it how they see fit, and which is why you have so many schools here who have tried to do it and they were all denied, every single one of them. So to do it holistically this late in the year, when we told him, even as of last week, we said we would support anybody who says they want to switch it. So why don't you let them do that? And they said something about bus schedules, and I said, you have to be kidding me. I said, you have a 20% increase in headcount at DOE Central, and you can't figure out a bus schedule? It's not about Brooklyn Queens Day. He has a right to make this a non-report day on his own. He doesn't need my authority or anyone else's. He can do that all on his own.